Hello, everybody. Look who we are blessed to have with us, emerging proud today. It's only Dr. Nicole Gruel, the notes coach from the other side of the world. Thank you so much for joining us, Nicole, from Sydney, Australia today. Really, really grateful to have you with us and really excited to talk to you more about your work, your recent PhD on non-ordinary transcendent experiences. I hadn't heard that phrase before I'd heard of your work, so really, really looking forward to kind of diving into that and finding out more from you. So thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Katie. Thank you. And hello to the Emerging Proud crew. What a wonderful community. What a wonderful conversation we're all having here. So thanks for bringing me along. Yeah, I look forward to wherever this conversation is going to go.
Yeah, we never know. It's like life.
Yes.
Best way, hey? So,
Yeah.
so you are multiple author, and your new book is based on your PhD research.
Yeah.
I wonder if you'd just mind giving
Mhm.
people your little description of a note, because that was like, oh, that really spoke to me when I read that. Would you mind just?
Absolutely. So a note is a non-ordinary transcendent experience. Non-ordinary in that it doesn't happen to us every day. It's not part of our usual daily experience. And transcendent in that it takes us out of our regular sense of self. We transcend our usual understanding of who this I is. And so there's a wide variety. Notes is a really broad term for a whole range, hundreds of experiences actually. So it was the transpersonal psychologist William Broad who came up with the term. And what he was trying to do was bring together three fields of study. He wanted to bring in transpersonal psychology, paranormal studies, and exceptional human experiences. So he tried to create this large, acronym that would essentially cater for all of those different pathways that have historically studied these things in different ways and had different approaches. So again, he was looking forward into the future. How do we kind of bring these many conversations that really are talking about very similar things often? How do we bring them together more cohesively?
Oh, amazing. And I love that. And I love that that's kind of what's happening in the world now, isn't it? In this field, it's like everything's really coming together. We're talking more about integral working, integral coaching. And I know that's how you
Yes.
work. So, yeah, I would just wonder whether we could start, Nicole, with you giving a brief history on your experience, your note, and kind of what led you to do what you're doing now. That would be wonderful.
Absolutely, I can. There's been several. There was what else did I want to mention about the notes there? Oh dear. So it'll come back to me anyway. Something so there was some other piece there also. Um, One part that William Broad did talk about really was how he wanted us to, he felt it was important to be with and talk to essentially these experiences. They are alive, they are happening, and so it's great to learn to interact with them because then fruits emerge from the experience themselves. Yeah. And exactly as you say, Katie, that's happening nowadays. More and more of these communities are coming together. People are talking about their experiences more. So that's wonderful. And there's many of us involved now in the work of how do we bring those fruits together to then just get on with whatever people are here to do in the world, and however we're here with our gifts to address the many issues, that we have going on.
Yeah, a fruit
So,
salad, hey? We've got to create a fruit salad. It's much more nourishing.
oh,
Each piece on its own.
right. Yeah, exactly. So, well, my experiences, I, when I was very young, I always was on a bit of a quest, I guess we could say. Even from a young age, I was asking, I asked my father at about 7 years old, what God do I believe in? I was later told this. And, his answer was anything you want. And, that was both a blessing and a curse at the time, because as a 7-year-old, I really wanted much more structure. I want the answer, tell me what I believe. And given his experience and in his own wisdom, he knew that an open path was better. So that really kickstarted, I guess, my hunger and desire to understand the big questions. Who am I? What am I doing here? Who are we? What is this experience all about? And I think because perhaps of that openness as well, certain experiences happened through life. So when I was 14, I did have a near-death experience. We were whitewater rafting in New Zealand. And it was a fabulous day, actually, and we did it one time and we had so much fun, so we went and did it again. And as we went over this huge 10-meter waterfall, our boat tipped down the bottom, and being a swimmer, I had the swimmer's reaction to put my arms up and try and move around. And when you have 10 meters of waterfall gushing down on you, that's the wrong response. And I got pushed very deep down underwater, and it was black. The water was just black. And so I didn't actually know which way was up or down. So there was no point in swimming. And after the sheer panic that came of I can't breathe, very soon after came a total calm and peace. And in that peace, in the blackness of the water, opened up a horizon of white light. Well, just light, really, a horizon of light. And walking directly towards me was my grandmother, who at that time was living, and my first pet, my first dog, who at that time had passed. And at 14 years old, I just thought, well, that's a bit weird. What are you doing here under the waterfall? How curious. And then this voice, a male voice right here, said very clearly, Nicole, remember to breathe. I didn't recognize the voice. And then with that voice came the memory of what I was supposed to do, which is curl up like a little ball and you rise to the surface like a cork. That was in the training that we had, because we had life jackets on. And so I did that. And of course, the dark water went to the lighter water and eventually came up the top, and out I popped. Now, at 14, I really didn't think much of that. It was, okay, good thing we didn't die, and on we go to our next adventure. Within 6 months of that happening, I also had some other experiences where I lost several close family members. So it was a near-death experience with many death experiences, all kind of bundled into 6 months. And I certainly didn't have the emotional maturity to deal with that at the time at 14. So I see that now as an initiation of sorts. It was a doorway into a non-ordinary, it was a note, and it was an experience that opened a doorway so big, but at the time I didn't know that. Yet the more I moved along in life, and the more I then started getting grounded in training, I went down certain yoga pathways, and I was just hungry for knowledge, in well-being, spiritual health, personal development, anything I could get my hands on, astrology, anything at all. I just wanted to understand the self. And the more that happened, the more I came to understand how significant that was at that time. Fast forward several years, and there were other experiences too that really brought me to the core of this being that I am. My 30, just when I was 30, I had another significant experience. There were many endings happening in my world, and in summary, it was like an onion being peeled in fast forward until there was nothing but a tiny little pinprick of light left. It was rather brutal. It was fast. And from that point, it changed how I move and be in the world. And then, even more recently, an experience has happened as well that has kind of brought me full circle back to that same horizon of light. And so in my research with this, eventually it brought me to, okay, I want to do more of this, but now in an academic form as well. and help contribute to the voices that are building validation around these experiences. Yeah, exactly as you're doing, Katie. You know, I want to enter the field and help, you know, and the deep motivation for that is really because I know these experiences are profound and they're happening to people, and language helps. Forums help, where people can verbalize things often for us, and people can go, oh, that, yeah, that, I had that, or I feel that, and it opens that doorway. So that's where the academic stream came into it after the experiential stream. It was a way of formalizing it, so that now, you know, I can move forward in a very grounded way with that as well. So that's really the notes, I guess. And that's what I wanted to say. Okay, why the term notes? So jumping into the academic experience, something that you get forced to do is come up with terminology, or get very clear on your terminology. And I found that the word spiritual is used a lot in many contexts, but it's also loaded.
Yeah.
So it draws in many people and it repels many people. And I guess I was looking for a term that I wanted to be as neutral as one could be in this. Even the term anomalous is loaded. Paranormal is loaded. So it's very hard as soon as you put something into language to you know, not sit one side or another of anything anyway, right? However, in going through the literature, I came across William Broad and his term, non-ordinary transcendent experience. And unfortunately, there were only 2 academic papers ever published with that term. One was him, and one was a lady, Jeannie Palmer, who then went on and did some study with him about the after effects of notes. And then Dr. Broad died. He passed away. And so there was no chance to take that forward. So when I came across the term, I thought, oh, look, well, out of all of them, I feel this is probably the most neutral that I've found. The problem is it's a mouth load. Non-ordinary transcendent experience is quite a bit. And yet
a broad range of people. I love that. And you're so right. It's like sometimes I do wonder if I'm wrong in using the word spiritual, because it does repel a lot of people and gets really misconstrued. And, you know, we try and put something that's ineffable into human language, and it narrows it straight away. So, yeah, I love that. And what I was going to say before was I'm just so grateful to you guys who are doing this academic research, because that's not my thing. And, you know, it's so needed to bridge this gap into making these experiences, you know, normalizing them, validating, recognizing them for people within systems. And I'm just so grateful when I come across people like you, because, like, thank you so much.
Yes. And I think we're at such an exciting time where really science is meeting spirit. There's amazing conferences that are on right now where you have leading scientists who are also having experiences and they're speaking out about things. And yeah, that's right. So this is a great time for these discussions to open up. Something's going on in the greater collective conscious, and it's also now coming in with this rigorous scientific study as well, and so that's helping it, at least in the Western mind, land a bit more solidly with people, I find. Yeah,
and quantum science too. It's like I'd never have imagined I'd have been interested in quantum physics, you know, and actually it, you know, when you start to read stuff, it makes things make so much more sense. So yes, absolutely. I wanted to mention a term that, because I'm really lucky to have your little sneaky peek at your manuscript, and it's nice. And there was a phrase in there that really spoke to me, which is kind of talking about what you've just been mentioning. Really, it's about how it's kind of these things speak to so many different popularities and experiences, and you say that notes bring us to the threshold of our known experience and they provocatively whisper. And when I read that, I was like, Oh yes, that's so true. And it's like you can't help but listen, can you? It's like this kind of this constant whispering. And as you say, as you described your experiences, it's like it just absolutely blows my mind how many patterns of similarities there are between people's experiences when I talk to people. It's like that early existential questioning in childhood, and then loss, death and loss, and then an eventual shedding of our facades of who we think we are just completely disappears, and then it leads you to this absolute unavoidable passion and mission to kind of get this out into the world. And it's just those patterns come up all the time. It's like there's something in that which needs to be really recorded and researched. And so would you mind if we go into a bit more detail about your thesis and your PhD?
Of course.
Is that okay?
Of course, I'd love to. Yeah. And just on that provocative whispering, they bring us to the threshold and provocatively whisper, what next? What next? Because I find what's going on right now, we are living in a spiritual candy shop. Any experience you want to kind of go and chase and have, you can pretty much do. If you want to go fly down to the Amazon for, a couple of weeks and go take a bunch of ayahuasca and have yourself, blown into shreds, on the transpersonal level, and then return to work and your ordinary life and try and, navigate that. Very, very difficult. And so what I'm finding is there's a lot of focus on having the experience, go and have a transformative weekend or a transformative experience. The question for me that comes up is, and what next? It's the what next part. Regardless of the experience, it's important to honor it. That happened, and that's huge. And now what? And what are you going to do with it? You're still here on planet Earth. You're embodied in a form. What do you want to do with your time? Yeah. How do you want to carry forward? Yeah. So I guess that's where the
the grounding part, isn't it? Like we were talking about before.
Totally.
Keeping our feet in the sand and the dirt, and like actually still doing this work. It's a real challenge.
Yes. So the dissertation really is part of that conversation there in the after effects. For many years, for over 10 years, I've been involved in the community of Jungian typology, and which in a nutshell, I guess you could say, is personality. But it's not surface personality. It gets quite deep. It's really, lifetime development, individuation, and our life force energy. Jung was interested in life force energy. How does it move through each of us so that we process information particular ways and interact with one another and the world in particular ways. So that's the typology piece. And I was interested in the intersection between notes and typology. What's going on there? Is there any relevance whatsoever? I don't know. So that was the question moving into the dissertation. I then went and interviewed 20 experiences who self-identified as having a note that changed their life. And that was really exciting, again, because notes are such a broad umbrella term. The variety of people that came was really diverse. So we had near-death experiences, Kundalini awakenings, sudden epiphanies, what else did we have? We had like this smorgasbord of experiences. It was really exciting, right? And it's people who had been through spiritual emergency experiences as well. So again, many. And then the conversations with them, I wanted to understand, one, what happened. Let's hear about the experience and contextualize it. But my question was and then what? How are you now? What has happened since? How do you understand from where you are now what happened? How did you understand at the time what happened? Has there been any change since? How has your life evolved since that experience? So that these are all the questions that come up in the aftermath of a note, and the title of the study was actually after notes. I was thinking, like wine, you have your after notes, you have your first punch, your first sip, and then something lingers afterwards, right?
Love it.
So what is it that lingers on? Yeah. And then in hearing those
question to clarify, so
yeah.
I've understood what you're saying. So with the typologies, were you looking at how different personality types interpret a note in a different way? Is that the intersection?
That was a part of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So I wanted to know how different personalities understand their note, understand and interpret. That's one part. And then how and if a particular personality type, if there's something that occurs in the after effects that's relevant to particular types.
Okay. Wow.
So say, for example, someone who is a deep analytical thinker. Yeah. In Jungian terms, we would call it an introverted thinker. So the energy is very inside. It comes from the inner world. It is concerned with the deep theories and deep principles, and really figuring things out. So someone who walks the world in a thinking manner like that, they do so before the experience, then something happens, and the question was, do they remain the same afterwards, or does something different come about? Now, if it remains the same, what does that look like? And if it's different, what does that look like? The findings that came out of the research were that it stays the same, but it's an enhanced version.
Okay.
So it's like me plus.
Who they really are.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly right. So that same very, introverted thinking person who's very structural and analytical and, gets to the core of thought, people who entered the research with that as one of their dominant typologies would say things like, I was thinking similar things, but at a whole new level. I could see things in a different way that I couldn't before. So where they might have had an individual thought beforehand, now they're seeing it in high dimension 3D. Yeah. It takes it to another depth. Yeah. And so they're able to also operate in the world at a new level of depth and being as well.
Yes, that makes so much sense. So much sense. So were there particular categories that you studied in more depth than others, and is this related to Jung's archetypes? Is it modernizing of the archetypes?
In a way, you could call typologies archetypes as well. An archetype is, I guess, an embodied form, an embodiment of an energetic pattern. And in that way, typology certainly is as well, thinking types and feeling types, and you can then personify them even further in archetypes. But in terms of the current popular literature around the 12 archetypes, etc., that's not the direction that this went down at all. This was, I stuck with the solid 8 personality type descriptions as Jung had them. Yep. So the four introverting types and 4 extroverting types that were there.
Okay. So is that how you chose subjects? You wanted to cover all of those types, or it was random?
Well, ideally I would have, but it was random because it's very hard to go out and find people.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. How did you manage that?
Yep. So I left it open, and then I worked with whoever showed up.
Okay.
Now, what emerged out of that, there were more people with a leaning towards introverted types than extroverted types. And I should say right now that the way that Jung approached it was to say, no one's a strict introvert or a strict extrovert. We all have we all have both. We use them to different capacities, and we use them, some energize us and some deplete us of energy. Yeah. So we just simply have tendencies or preferences towards certain ones. So the tool I use is a wonderful instrument that's come out quite recently called the Gifts Compass, and it's able to measure each of these 8 typologies for each person. So you get this really beautiful melody of types, and you can see from there, you know, which parts are more dominant from a person or not. So that was the instrument that was used, and from there I could then get a sense of, okay, when I put all of, say, the feeling voices together, right, the extroverted feeling voices together, what are they saying? Are there themes in what those guys say? So it was split into the 8 types, and then looking at the themes that emerged from there.
Cool. And so
Yeah.
what's your biggest finding? What things kind of really stood out the most? That's a huge question, isn't it? Sorry, you can break it down.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I, One big thing was, it was a surprise to me, this, I mean, it sounds totally spot on, this we become more of who we are through these experiences. But the data showed me that's really true. It's
So
really
cool.
true.
So
If
cool.
we have these tendencies beforehand, it's like we're doing it, but even more to a whole new level of expanded being.
I love that, because when you have the experience, it's like it's really intangible, isn't it? It's like that, you know it, but it's like
Yeah.
how can that even be explained? So the fact that you found a way to do that is amazing.
Yeah, and what it showed me then is it's really true about, it really gave me courage to, not courage, it really gave me the even further confidence to walk forward with people in the message of, your gifts are your gifts. Work with them. You know, whatever you brought before the experience, work with that. That's what's coming through you. That's how you're built. You know, these experiences have enhanced who you are. Carry on with the work, because it's only you that can do what you're doing in the world your way. And the more that we dig into that gift and those fruits, and we bring it out and we mature it, then, you know, that person is likely to go on and do really incredible things in the world. So it's that space of, I find it really important to understand and then nurture those experiences, because I do find that if we manage to do that for ourselves as experiencers of notes, if we can work with, okay, all of that stuff happened, whether it was one experience or a series of experiences, then now I've gone through certain shifts. I have to understand those, I have to work with those, and feel comfortable now in this mode of operating in the world that I am and the gifts that I'm bringing forth, to then now interact with the world. It's very much the hero's journey as well. And it's that final piece of when the hero goes through it all and has to go back into the world, you
Yes.
know, that has to re-enter the ordinary. You know, Harry Potter's got to come back from Hogwarts and be with the mugworts in the regular
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
So yeah, so
I was thinking
this is,
that when you were talking about your experience coming full circle, it's like that's, I hear that so often. I recognize that in my own journey too. It's like, oh, I'm
yeah,
back. That's why I went through all of that stuff. And it's like, I was just
yes,
thinking, is that how you work as a coach? It's about helping that person kind of build the courage to be who they really are, and shed
exactly,
facade, because it's like we kind of know, don't we, who we are at our core. It's actually
yeah.
being brave enough to live that. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I
And
get.
to do it in a way where it's that's exactly why I get so excited too with the coaching. It's why I love this work, because each person is just exciting. You know, it's an amazing story. There's a process taking place, and it's witnessing the potential of where this person is going in the world and what they're doing and what's being birthed through them. And to work with that, quite frankly, is the most exciting thing I've ever done. I love it. I really love it. And for me, you know, my question is, what is the world going to look like when we all just get on with it? If
Yeah.
people were just doing that, whatever that thing is, that is bubbling through or burning through, however you experience it, what on earth is this world going to look like once
Utopia
loads of us
is
get
making,
together and
isn't
collaborate?
it? Yeah.
And I think well, it is happening right now. There are pockets of people, a very conscious community, who are living it and doing it every single day, because again, they're in the ordinary world and they're acknowledging the extraordinary, and they're merging this together so that they're no longer having to walk in two worlds, so to speak, but to be in this world, in numerous ways.
In their integrity. And that's what I love about this
Yes.
community too. It's like, oh, thank you, real people, without your facades. It's beautiful. Yeah. Wow. Gosh, what amazing work. Incredible. Is there anything else that you'd like to bring in or mention from your conclusions? I mean, that's huge.
Yes. One key piece. Yeah, one key piece is that all types, the one thing that all types, there are two things actually that all types mentioned. One is that validation is a very important part of the integrative journey. Every single person in some way mentioned in validation. However, with different personality types around, integration looks different for different people. So again, knowing and being honest to who you are and how things work for you, you're going to find that validation in different ways. You know, very social people and human relation based people will probably do very well in support groups, meeting other people, sharing stories in that way. That might not work for someone who's very theory based and they want to jump into the quantum physics and see the terms written and read the research that's there. So experiences will chase what naturally comes to them, because we can't escape the lenses that we wear as we go through the world. So that was one. The second really important thing that they all mentioned was that love with either a small L or a big L, however you want to say it, showed up in some way through their experience. And in the book that's coming out, I devote a chapter to that, and I use mostly the quotes from the people in the study, because what I'm putting forward in that chapter is, let's create a vocabulary of love. It's we in English are so limited by love. I think it was Joseph Campbell I read in there that he pointed out, it wasn't Joseph Campbell, it's in there anyway, but he pointed out that we in English only have one word for this, which is love, whereas Sanskrit has 96 words for love. You know, we are in a drought of expression for something that is incredibly rich. And so there's different types of love, of course, you know, the love that we have between friends, the love that we have for our work, the love that we have for our lover, the love that we have for our children, our family, for the planet, etc. We in English use one word. So what if we had a more robust dictionary around this, where we could pick out those nuances more, and then we teach to the next generation so that they know different experiences, different layers of love are actually possible. So that was another piece that came out of there that I just found moving, that even the hardest rational types spoke of love.
I love that vision, and it reminded me of Ken Wilber's work actually as well, and how it's like the new religion. Love is just the new religion, you know, and I think that's so true, isn't it? It's like when you wake up to this interconnected consciousness, that it's that knowing that love is the energy of everything. Like that's just what it is. Finding a new language for that is lovely.
and I think that's what was powerful to me, because beforehand I you know, with that knowing that you've just said there, I had assumed, well, I guess it's kind of people like me who see the world my way that would, you know, it's my tribe that would talk about love in such a way or see that interconnectivity. And so that's what was so profound for me, was that seeing people that represent all typologies saying a similar thing in their own way, I thought, okay, Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yes, and that's what's creating the new world, isn't it? Conscious world is that we're
Yeah.
we're waking up to that and being more compassionate, because you can't help it. Thank you for saying about the validation too, because that really kind of clarifies what I'm doing, and
Yes.
this is why it's so important to me to get this into the mental health system, because it's like people need their experiences to be validated, because of that, when they're not, it just perpetuates mental distress and crisis. It's like, yeah, it's so simple and yet so unrecognized. So yes, what you're doing is just amazing, and I really appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of your manuscript. It's really exciting. So where can people find out about that, Nicole? So your website?
Oh, so yeah, the website is probably the best place to go. So go to the Notes Coach, notes.com. Check it out.
Get out.
And I hang out on Facebook, so you can definitely reach me via Facebook. That's a good way to stay connected on the latest updates, etc. And once the book goes live, then that's where you'll hear about it for sure.
Be out there. Fabulous.
Yeah.
So can I just ask you one last thing as well, because you've just launched an online meeting for IANDS,
Yes.
for near-death
Right.
experiences, just for near-death experiences, or
So, no, not at all. Not at all. So IANDS itself is expanding at the moment. Uh, long story short, I wanted to start a local chapter of IANDS here in Sydney, Australia, and several weeks later, it turns out that we're now, me in partnership with IANDS, we're now launching online circles, and of course, once you go online, you can go global. So it all just kind of happened quickly, as these things do.
Yeah.
So we're calling them ISGOs, which is IAN. So IAN stands for the International Association for Near-Death Studies.
Yeah.
IAN's sharing groups online.
Okay.
So it's a peer-to-peer group, people who have had extraordinary experiences. It is definitely not limited to near-death experiences. It's also open.
It's global.
And it's global. It's global because it's online. So what we're doing right now is we're training facilitators. Many of them are already IANDS leaders in their own community. So these are very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very experienced and knowledgeable people in terms of group dynamics, in terms of these experiences themselves, and really wonderful facilitators that can hold space for these kinds of conversations. So we're simply creating the skills to bring that onto an online format so that they can hold space. And we will have particular interest groups that emerge as well. So say we're doing an ISGO for first we're having language groups come out. There's going to be an ISGO for French speakers, ISGO for Spanish speakers. We've already got those facilitators coming forth, which is great.
Wow.
Then certain interest groups. So there might be an ISGO for, say, nurses, because nurses are, experiencing all kinds of things every day, right? Or ISGO for mental health workers, ISGO for UFOs, people, that are interested in encounter experiences. ISGO psychedelics. We can go on and on with
I'm just loving the fact that I spoke to somebody else the other day as well. I'm going to be blogging this about, they've set up Spiritual Emergence Anonymous, so a whole network of online meetings based on the 12-step program, but for spiritual emergence. And it's like the work I'm doing with Emerging Kind is, it's like we're all tapping into the same universal consciousness, and it's like, what's next? What's next is creating sharing circles for people to be validated, safe spaces for people to go to talk about their experiences. And it's like, we're all doing it. That's what I love. It's like this sharing, there's no ownership, like, well, I want to do it but you can't. And it's like, we just want multiple groups so that people can go as much as, if we can create international groups where people can go every hour of every single day, imagine the amount of people that could be supported through that. So,
And I think that's where this is headed. You know, we're creating that as we go through, and it's coming in multiple platforms. And again, like typology, it's important to have different platforms because each is going to hold that space with a slightly different tone and in a slightly different way that is going to reach the people it needs to in that way. So one platform might really draw another or really repel another. And that's fine. That's fine, because the people that need to go where they need to go where they feel comfortable. It's going to be community. And from an experiencer perspective, how wonderful to actually have choice. You know, I could go to several if I wanted to. There's nothing restricting anyone to show up, and to show up even differently in those spaces as well, and to understand their experience from different angles too. We don't
integrate those. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. I feel so excited by this because, you know, I feel like we're all part of something that we're in the cooker, and it's not yet entirely clear where this is going, but there's a committed body of people that have put their hand up and said, okay, let's jump in. And we're all just kind of jumping in. That's right. And we're all jumping in together, and it's moving. It was like the way these ISGOs came up. Wasn't even on my radar in any way at all. All I wanted to do was start my own little group here, you know, little single group in Sydney. And then here we go. It's the time to do this. We have the technology. People are used to having conversations. You and I are on opposite ends of the world right now. This is how it's going on.
Yeah, it's so amazing. I'm delighted. Thank you so much. And I'll put the link to that below the interview as well, so people can
Thank you. Yes. Well, we have, so the facilitators are going through now, and we're about to launch with the first actual group of experiencers. So I'll pop that link in. We're going to keep the group small, and then those interest groups are going to grow. So if that calls to people,
doesn't it? Like the more people come, the more people can train to hold space, and then it can just grow and grow and grow. And that's kind of, we want to become self-sustaining. So that's the peer revolution, isn't it? The peer revolution, and the exotic fruit salad that we're creating with
yum. How very delicious.
Absolutely. Oh, it's been such a joy to have you. Thank you so much for joining us, Nicole.
Thank you, Katie. Such a delight always to connect. You know, such great vibes. Thank you.
Even from the other side of the world, I can feel it. It's so cool. That's what I love about technology. Thank you, universe.
Right. So thank you everyone for hanging out this long and watching. This is really, I'm grateful for the sharing.
We look forward to hearing where your work goes and what's next.
Stay tuned. ...
There's always something more. So good luck with your book launch. We shall be watching you and with you.
Thank you, Katie.
Cheering from the sidelines.
Thank you. Bye.